Welcome back. I'm here today with Renee Kubrick. She is the founder and owner of Gemlust, local to the San Francisco Bay Area. Renee, welcome to today's show.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
So, Gemlust, by the name of what you do, you're into antique type jewelry, or tell me about how you got into what you do.
First and foremost, it's gems. I'm passionate about gems and gemology, and I seek out the top 2% of gems for private individuals, either as a piece of jewelry or just something to hold on to as a hard asset. But generally, we're not talking about the kind of things that you find in a jewelry store. And that includes antique jewelry, which is very hard to come by in today's marketplace.
Now, how did you get started in this? Is the jewelry market, and especially what you do, is a very specialized industry. And is it something you go to school, or do you just do it by the?
Well, I actually was a nurse. I went to college to become a nurse, but I grew up in the jewelry business. My mom and dad were in the business, and they had a couple of stores in the mountains of the Catskills in New York. And so at a very young age, I was working in stores selling jewelry, and always had a passion for gemology. My dad was very kind and used to ask people who would come to the hotels to bring me rocks and minerals that had crystals in them, because I had a collection going when I was very young. And I just was always amazed that the earth could create these incredible, beautiful, glittering, objects that once you faceted them turned into extraordinary, beautiful, like the rarest things on the planet. And so at an early age, I got an exposure to it, but I didn't think I wanted to do that as a living.
Okay, so your dad was in the industry, and you converted from being a nurse because you had more passion into the gems?
Well, no, actually, I've had 3 careers. After I was a nurse, I worked in the furniture industry for about 20 years. I did product development and design and visual merchandising, and I used a lot of inspiration from jewelry, and our company was smoking hot for like 20 years because we specialized in one thing, which was tables, and they were objects of art on display as a table. So you might have like a metal bracket that held together an ancient coin on display as part of a base with a glass top. And we just did things that nobody else did. It wasn't the run-of-the-mill kind of furniture you could buy in typical retail stores. And again, most of my inspiration came from jewelry, because jewelry has so much that you can be inspired from. I mean, it's ancient. Even the cave people were adorning themselves with something. So,
most people, when they look at the jewelry industry, you either know what you're doing or you don't. And so I imagine there's a lot of deception, that people think they're buying something precious and it's really not. How do you advise individuals as they're going about investing in
you're
doing
absolutely right about the fraud. There's so much fraud. You really have to have a professional with you that knows a lot about gemology, knows how a stone should be cut. In terms of diamonds, you can get the biggest loss on buying a diamond that isn't cut properly or that's had treatments to it. And generally, the way that you stay safe is to buy from an accredited dealer who adheres to a strict code of ethics, but also you have to buy stones that are certified. If you get a stone that's certified, that guarantees you that you're getting what you paid for. It'll tell you if the stone has been treated, it'll tell you the origin, but most importantly, it'll tell you if the stone is synthetic or if it's, from the earth.
What does it mean when oftentimes you'll see descriptions, this is not heat treated, or what is all that about? Does it lessen the value to have heat?
Well, anytime you buy a stone, if you're buying it for investment, you want it to have no treatments whatsoever. But it's very rare that most gems are not treated, especially something like an emerald, which comes with a lot of inclusions. So there are acceptable practices for each gem. Like, it's very acceptable to heat a ruby or to heat a sapphire, because that removes a lot of these little silk inclusions that tend to disappear when it's heated. And it only enhances the color, which really gives it a lot more personality. But it does diminish the value, not as much as you would think, but it does diminish the value to have any form of treatment at all. If you were going to invest in a stone, you'd want to buy something with no treatment. But again, you'll pay 4 or 5 times the price for something that's unheated. So it gets to be out of somebody's range, especially if they're going to wear it. They were going to put it in a safety deposit box for 20 years. they might want to make sure that they had a stone that had no treatments.
I'm visiting here today with Renee Kubrick, and she is the founder of Gemlust. And Renee, I need to take a quick break,
Sure.
and we'll be right back after these messages. Since you can't take your wealth with you, spend time with your family. Welcome back. I'm visiting here today with Renee Kubrick, and she is the founder of Gemlust. And Renee, this gemology always fascinates me, but Gemlust, tell me about the name, how you came up with that.
Well, I guess I'm passionate about gems, probably more than most people. I think that they're the Earth's greatest miracle. They come from geological events that are cataclysmic, like one continent collides into another, and the ocean gets sucked into the Earth's crust, and gems are formed in that alchemy. And it's amazing how rare they are, and how many millions of years they take to create. And when you facet them and turn them into something that adds sparkle and shine to it, it's just something that is preserved forever. It never loses its value. It's always something you could pass down for generations. Things go in and out of style, but a precious gem and something that's rare is always rare, and there's always a buyer for it. A great example of that is rubies. Rubies are the most rare gem on the planet, other than maybe green, imperial green jade. The reason for that is rubies can only be formed in the absence of carbon. And as you know, the Earth is full of carbon. And so for some cataclysmic event to happen, it has to eliminate all the carbon from the environment. And that comes from induction, when the ocean gets sucked into the Earth's crust, which only happens maybe once in I don't know how many millions of years. And so when that perfect alchemy is created and you get a small amount of rubies as a result, and it's only in one place in the world, there are people who are going to want those rubies. And generally, the crystals are very small. They don't grow to large sizes. So to get something over 2 or 3 carats, the price goes up exponentially. Diamonds, on the other hand, that are made from carbon are plentiful because, everything is made from carbon. I don't know if you know this, but you could even have your deceased pet made into a diamond. There are companies that do that. They take the carbon from your a deceased loved one and they turn it into a diamond. But diamonds are plentiful. They're rare because De Beers created a monopoly, and the only time that I would ever seriously invest in diamonds, if I was going to have a portfolio of gems, would be if it was a colored fancy diamond, something that was naturally colored, not enhanced by heat, because the rarity factor, and that's what makes a gem so spectacular, is how rare it is. A beautiful emerald that has no inclusions is so incredibly rare. There are a lot of emeralds. 99% of them have terrible inclusions in them. They're not attractive. In fact, 80% of the gemstones that are available on the commercial market are just commercial gemstones. They're not worth very much. The top tier go to dealers and people who are in an inner circle of gem, business. And that's the business that I address, the top 2%. So, the commercial stones that you see in Macy's that are on sale for 50 off and then another 20 off when you get to the counter really don't have any value. They might be pretty to look at, but they're not rare. They're not as beautiful as, a natural ruby that is large and has no, inclusions in it. So it just depends on the rarity factor. Like imperial green jade, almost all of it is hoarded by the Chinese and Japanese. They value it more than they do gold or any other currency, because for them, they believe it has, properties that brings them abundance. And that's the other thing about gems. A lot of people believe that these crystals contain some form of metaphysical powers, if you will, that I just know that they make people very happy.
So Renee, in the world of gems, I hear today with it's a specific segment of the market, the demographics, more high end. A lot of individuals are concerned about the currency markets and what's going to happen. And so oftentimes they look at, well, let me get an investment of gems in case I need this. And when you're looking at the rarity or from an investment quality, how do you advise your clients?
Well, again, the things that maintain the most value over the long term are things like antiques and like an antique car or an old antique gun. There are collectors for these. There are collectors for gems and collectors for antique jewelry. Antique jewelry that's made with diamonds from the late 1800s to early 1900s is extremely rare and hard to find because diamonds were just found in the late 1800s, and the only people who could afford them were very wealthy. So to get an antique diamond ring as an engagement ring, which a lot of my clients actually, I specialize in that. I might have an eBay store that I sell those in called Vintage Diamonds. And I Googled, did some research. The word vintage diamonds is Googled over 90,000 times a month. So there's a huge market for young people that want to return to, at an age where it was a little bit more romantic. These antique diamond rings that were from the Edwardian period, early 1900s to the Art Deco 1930s, are so collectible and so sought after, and they have appreciated in value greatly in the last 10 years because demand far exceeds the supply. And so a lot of my clients are young people who come to me for engagement rings. So they either want an antique diamond ring, which is a specialty, which is something that I've been specializing in most of my life because my parents, they specialized in antique jewelry. And so I grew up with an appreciation because you can see a lot of different pieces of jewelry when you go to a show, but an antique piece is one of a kind and you'll never see it again. And if you pass on it, you'll never see something like it. So if you want it, you have to buy it then. And it fuels the philosophy of you have hard assets that when you pass on, you can pass something valuable on to your heirs that has so much more meaning than, money in a bank or paper goods. It just really, there's a psychological element to owning a great piece of jewelry or an antique treasure that, is made with craftsmanship that you don't see today, or a very rare and elusive stone gem that, you just don't see it everywhere.
So Renee, I need to take a quick break, and I'm visiting with Renee Kubrick, and she's the founder of GemLust, a firm that specializes in antique jewelry, and we'll be right back after these messages.
I love fishing, with my family.
I think it would be easier to use a net.
It was so much fun.
The times when we are together, it makes it all the more worth it.
Having Dad teach them how to cast a fly rod, and
as long as we're doing stuff together, we're having fun.
Some people see a father and a son fishing together, while others see a succession plan. Welcome back. I'm visiting here today with Renee Kubrick. She is the founder of GemLust. And, Renee, we touched on the rarity of jewelry and, how it has its value. Let's talk about your clients. How do you get new clients?
Okay, so I do a few different things. I buy from my clients, I sell to my clients, and I trade with my clients. And it's mostly through word of mouth or through referral. So, for example, I have a client who recently I got her a 10-carat emerald, and it was an amazing price. And, I'm always trying to buy something that's undervalued when I purchase it so that when I present it to my client, it becomes a no-brainer.
A 10-carat emerald?
Yes, it was a $50,000 emerald, and I sold it to her for $20,000, and it was set in a beautiful setting, even though she bought it for the emerald. Anyway, she was on a flight. She was in first class, and she was wearing the emerald ring, and some woman was sitting next to her the whole flight and said, I just have to ask you, where did you get that emerald? I'm in the market for one myself, been eyeing one at an auction, and it's something like $30,000 to $40,000. Well, my client didn't reveal what she paid, but she gave her my number, and she called me, and she told me that she was considering buying this expensive emerald at an auction house, and she was going to be paying a 25% buyer's premium on top of whatever it was. And so we had a long conversation, and I told her that the way that I usually approach things is if I knew she was looking for an emerald, I wouldn't buy a finished piece of jewelry. I would go to a gem show, the biggest one in the world, and I would go to the best dealers that are, direct from the mine, the guys who cut them from the country where they're found, and I would procure one for her and charge her, a small buyer's premium. And that way she would be assured that she would be getting something from an accredited, resource that adhere to a certain code of ethics, and it would be coming with a certificate, and she would be able to buy it at below wholesale. And that is something that most people don't know. You really can buy gems and jewelry at below wholesale. You're never going to make money or even catch up to what you paid for if you pay retail. And I don't care if the retailer gives you 50% off, because there's always marketing scams, 50% off. But jewelry has such a high markup. It's 3 times what it costs. And if you include all the middle people that are involved in the process, because it's not just the mining, it's the cutting, and then it's distributing, and then selling to wholesalers, and the wholesalers sell to manufacturers, then the manufacturers sell to retailers, and then the retailer sells it to you. So when you have all that chain of people that in the supply, you're going to pay sometimes 10 times more for that than you really need to. So if you paid retail, as soon as you buy it, it's worth half of what you've purchased it for. And I unfortunately have to be the bearer of bad news sometimes when people bring things to me and they say, I spent $20,000 on this and it's not worth more than $4,000 or $5,000. And I show them, look, this is what we can get it for you for. And it becomes the kind of thing that you really have to have the resources. And I'm fortunate that I have the ones that I have, because I've been doing it for so long. And, I don't like to pay for unnecessary things when I'm dealing with young clients who are very, very astute. They know what the cost things are, and they're going to get everything reappraised. And my goal is that it appraises for double or triple what they paid for it. And that's usually what happens. And that's why I get repeat business. And it starts out with an engagement ring, and then it becomes, the wedding jewelry, and then it's the push present after they have a baby, and then a special anniversary, and then they tell their friends. And, I become a lifelong friend, and I love it. I love the process because it brings so much joy. But it got to the point where, I have 30-something-year-old clients. How much more jewelry can they buy? I have one client, she's 32. Her husband has bought her jewelry for the last 10 years, and she's got a suite of everything. And so now I think I'm just going to be putting together gem portfolios for them, because she loves gems, and we're going to pick out those kinds of gems that will have appreciation value. And instead of looking at a computer screen, looking at their portfolio, they'll have a few gems in the palm of their hand that they can look at that'll appreciate and value and make them feel very happy.
You love what you do, and I can see it with the passion in your voice.
Thank you.
So what's your typical process? A new client comes to you. Do they typically come with a specific request, or they say, "Hey, Renee, just go find me something that makes money for me"?
Well, it's usually some young guy who's found out from a relative or whatever that I'm a knowledgeable resource and somebody that can be trusted. And they'll contact me and they'll say, like my last client, he was from Georgia. I'd never met him. He's got a very wonderful girlfriend. She does sign languaging for the deaf, and she uses her hands a lot. And he wanted something that was very understated, but he wanted top quality, upper 2%. And so he said, I can buy a diamond here in Atlanta. We have, a merchandise mart here, but I'm coming to you because I know you will prevent me from making a mistake. And so basically I went on her Pinterest page, because I said, I always asked for him to send me a picture of his fiance to be, and a picture of her hand so I can see what she looks like. And then fortunately she had a Pinterest page, and when you go on Pinterest, you can see all these different designs that women are pinning, and all their heart's desires and their biggest wish list. And I saw what was important to her, and I designed a ring. At first I picked out a diamond, and I knew since he wanted something small, it had to be the upper tier of the best cut, the best color. So I looked at hundreds of diamonds. I called my diamond dealer. I told him what I was looking for. I looked at hundreds of diamonds. I have a very good eye. I picked out one that was just in a league of its own. I mean, I took him outside. I look at him in every different light, inside, outside, bad light, good light. The cut is the most important thing on a diamond, besides the 4 C's, because a well-cut diamond sparkles like crazy. And really that's what most people want a diamond for, is that sparkle factor. And this one was just amazing. The cut on it, the clarity, everything was superb. Came with a GIA certificate. So he came out with his dad and looked at the diamond under a microscope, a 900 powered microscope, to make sure that it was the diamond that was indeed in the certificate. And then talked to me about what kind of mounting, and we designed it together, knowing that she was using her hands a lot and didn't want a flashy ring. And I make suggestions. I'm very opinionated. And generally, people are. I've yet to have a client that wasn't happy with, something that we've created for them. But I love the idea of buying the stone and then making the piece of jewelry, because I think it's so much better of a value for my client. They get a much better deal. There's a lot more personally invested. It's so much fun for me, and the girl really seems to be happy.
Renee, this has been a lot of fun, and what we'll do for the listeners before we wrap up the segment here, but how does a person reach you?
Well, I can be reached I have a store in Lafayette called Gem Lost, and it's at 3529 Mount Diablo Boulevard, and it's mainly by appointment only, although I am open, several days a week. You can reach me on my private line, 209-609-2548, or you can reach me at Renee, RENEE, at Gemlust, GEMLUST.com. I have an eBay store called Vintage Diamonds, which you can Google, I'm sure, or you can go on my website, and there's a link to that.
And we'll have all this information on our rebroadcast on the website of groco.com. And you can see more about today's show, and also contacting Renee. Renee, I'd like to thank you for
pleasure.
being on today. And we'll be right back after these messages.